Could a video game be the ideal model to predict flooding? Hello, I'm Dr. Chris Skinner, aka Flood Skinner, a scientist, hydrologist, environmental modeller and a science communicator. Welcome to this, the first ever episode of Model Life, where I'll be taking a sideways look at modelling, covering topics like flooding, career tips and a smattering of gaming in there too. So let's go. Cities Skylines, the most popular city builder game in the world at the moment, having sold over 12 million copies since its release in 2015. Anyone familiar with the SimCity series knows exactly how this game works. You're the mayor of the city. You build the infrastructure, the road, the water, the power, and you zone that land for homes, shops and factories, and you watch your city grow around you, all the while managing your budget and facing those challenges the game throws at you. City Skylines also boasts some of the most advanced transport dynamics in any game ever made, with an agent-based model simulating how your citizens get from A to B, often making poor choices, and you'll soon find your city gridlocked. Having briefly worked in town and transport planning, I really love this game. But I've spent most of my career since researching flooding, and in particular using computer models that simulate how water moves around. What really interests me about City Skylines is that it simulates water dynamically, both in the sea and in rivers. So if you make a change to the river, the water will respond to it. To me that means there is a model for water in the game itself, and if there is a model for water, surely we can model flooding. Sadly, flooding is not part of the basic game normally, but thanks to the vibrant modding community, I've found a tool that would allow me to do it. Water in this game comes from emitters. Normally these are positioned just off the edge of the playable space, and they spawn water over a set area and up to a certain height. As long as water is able to flow away from that area, that height will never be reached and the water will continue to flow from the emitter. The water editing tools made by the modder Bleeding Penguin allow you to add new emitters to the game, and I use these tools to make a new little channel and add a little bit of water to the river that's going to make my flood. But what am I going to flood? So I built this city in the West Valley map. It is a vibrant, small city of around 100,000 people. Like any city, it has developed in stages, and one of the oldest areas I built was the main commercial district that I named Floods Often, right on the inside of the meander of the large river. Behind Floods Often is Wet Dwells, a district of high-rise residential housing. Across the river on the other bank are the suburbs of the peninsula, and this area has lower density housing and really good services. I've protected some areas by flood walls, while others are set further back away from the water's edge. And I've deliberately built the city to be at risk of flooding, so I'm really hoping this works. Now it's taken a while, but the extra water that I've added into the river is beginning to make the river rise. And watching this flood approach my city is like watching a relentless, creeping terror slowly stalking its prey. The first impact on my city came from outside. Now these highways connect your city to other cities that are off the map, and they bring in the people into your city, but also they drive that trade of raw materials that fuel your industry and the goods that you can sell in your shops. It also takes those things in the opposite direction. This highway flooded and the flow of traffic stopped. This meant all the trade that usually uses this route just ceased, meaning reduction in the goods and materials going in and out of my city. If you own a factory in West Valley, all of a sudden that supply of raw materials you rely on has disappeared, with your stocks of finished goods piling up as there's no way for you to get them to customers. The flood moves past the highway and the water begins to lap around the base of the giant flood walls bordering the peninsular area. And that doesn't last long. But why are the flood walls so ridiculously high in this game? They're enormous. You would never have them that big in real life. Even though the water can't get past the flood wall, it can go around it. And by this bridge the water is doing just that, flooding this junction and slowly making its way along the housing behind the wall. Now imagine how the people in these houses here are feeling. Every day they look out of their windows at this ruddy great big wall. A wall that looms large and casts shadows over their gardens in the summer, thinking this might be a ridiculous thing for us to look at, but at least it's going to keep us safe. But now that flooding is heading towards them, all because some idiot didn't quite build the wall right. Swiftly moving on, the water is getting very high along the western banks of Wet Dwells, where there's only really this low boardwalk. Now this looks more realistic and kind of like how real life flood defences look, but I don't think it offers much protection in the game. The boardwalk gets very quickly overtopped by the rising river, and it begins to flood the buildings close to the river bank. And these are high density residential properties, and those unfortunate enough to live on the ground floors will be having their homes flooded, and others higher up will be stranded. Now driving through floodwater is very dangerous, and you should never ever do it, even if you are part of a police chase. Run! Watch this Mr. Run, he's getting caught by the water. I hope he's a good swimmer. And I've made it! Over on the opposite bank, the other side of the peninsula region, the houses have been built a little further back from the river, up on the bank. And this provides a nice area of green space close to the river, with footpaths for dog walkers, joggers, cyclists and others. It is this green space that floods first, meaning that the footpaths are inaccessible for a little bit of time, but the houses set back are not flooded. In a real flood, or using a more specialist flood model, this area would also be storing some of the volume of that flood water, lowering the heights of the water a little bit around it and downstream. Back on the other bank, we can see how floods often got its name. Now, place names can sometimes be a real clue to historic flooding and potential future risk. The Floods Often district itself was built on low-lying land on the inside of a river meander, and as the water levels rise, floods encroach from several directions. Roads are blocked, bus routes are severed, subways are flooded. The general fabric that makes society run smoothly begins to come apart. Those threads are unravelling. The river water has inundated large areas of the city, causing huge swathes of buildings to be abandoned. But these impacts are also felt away from the areas inundated by floodwater. Disconnected transport routes are wreaking havoc. People can't get to their jobs or to the shops. Shops can't get goods to sell or customers to buy things. The police can't get to crimes, which is developing hotspots. And dustbin lorries can't get around to take the rubbish and garbage away, leaving it piled on the streets. These impacts linger even after the floodwater drains away. The impacts linger on and can be seen in the levels of population and also in the budget for the city. So it's been possible to create something that at least resembles or feels like a flood in City Skylines. And I think this can potentially teach us a lot about flooding and how we can model and manage it. I'm going to be unpacking this in future videos, so make sure you hit both like on this video and subscribe to the channel now. Do it now, go on, so you don't miss out on those. But for now, stay dry out there.